G'day everybody, hope everyone's well. So this is a bit of a short update video on a bit of stuff I've done on the patrol recently. So as you saw in the last video, I had a bit of problems, oil leaking and that. So I've hopefully fixed up that again. What I originally did was JB weld over the crack on the valve cover. I did that a few times, but it just cracked over the JB weld, so I've switched to some steel stick epoxy putty. So fingers crossed that works. You can see me here struggling to get the winch in. I really recommend a two-man lift to get the winch in. I was able to do it alone. I tried first with this technique with the sling, which probably could have worked if I'd put more effort and more time into trying to do it. But I ended up just laying on my back and kicking the winch up with my shoulders, which was a little bit dangerous. I don't recommend it. I recommend getting a friend to help you, or even like a car jack with a bunch of wood. Any way was better than this. This was an absolute pain. But while you're watching me struggle, I'll just talk about the stuff that's going on. So yeah, the patrol's in a reasonably good nick. It's apart from the oil leaking onto the exhaust, it's completely drivable and roadworthy. Yeah. So I've planned a four-wheel drive trip. The first proper one I will be having. That's in 2 weeks' time, so I'll be throwing the 35s on it and hopefully getting a good bit of off-road video for the first time ever. Apart from that, there's not too much that's going on. You can see I've fitted the light bar there. I still have to mount the oil gauge up, the oil pressure gauge that sits in the engine bay. I just haven't had time to do that. I'll have another video coming out in the next day or two on servicing the Hilux. I just did the oils and that. A bit of content there. But apart from that, there's not a whole lot else I can update you on. I'm slowly working towards getting stuff ready to finally get this car fully off-road functional. So I haven't actually hooked the winch up yet. It's mounted up and everything. I just haven't had time to go through the winch box, reconnect it and adjust its position to a point where I can mount it again, because right now it's just sort of cable tied behind the winch and not in a perfect spot. Another video I'll be working on soon is how to tune up the diesel engine. So I've been fooling around with mine, adjusting the pump timing here and there, fooling around with the fuel screw and the booster reference. Got to quite a good spot. I'm happy with it. It's not too hot exhaust temps and it boogies around enough for a 2.8 at least. But I'll be working on that and putting that together in the near future, so stay tuned for that. And apart from all that else, there's not a whole lot to talk about, so I'll cut to the main footage that I've filmed for this video. Okay, I got a couple of things here. So this here is the Airbox, the factory Airbox, out of an Rd28 Patrol, a GU. I don't know if the GQs use the same ones, probably not, because there's a special geometry of the bolting that mounts it to the side of the engine bay. And so this is the factory lid, and as you can see, it fits on nicely. This lid, it's got this sort of restriction in it. I don't know why they designed that into it. It might be some kind of like, I don't know, vortex creator, or like a slight bottleneck to somehow improve flow, even though it doesn't. But yeah, so the problem with these is that they do have that flow restriction there. And also mine has had the tab on the corner brake off, so it's just open there and doesn't filter any air, which is bad. And so over here is a Rd28 Airbox lid. And so, as you can see, that fits on exactly the same. However, what you have to do is you've got to cut out a tab that sits on the factory Airbox for the RD here, and it'll sit down. But the problem is, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. If I hold the camera like this, you see the ZD Airbox lid faces out this way, whereas the RD Airbox lid faces up this way. So the Rd30 Airbox lid is output on a different plane, which is slightly annoying. So what I'm going to be doing is butchering up this Airbox lid and cutting out the part from this one here. And what that'll allow me to do is modify it onto the RD one so that it'll face the same way, and it'll just have this larger input so that there's no bottleneck or air restriction going in. I don't know if it'll make much of a difference, but I've been told by somebody that Rd30 airboxes flow the best out of all of the stock GU airboxes. So yeah, the plan is cutting up and butchering up this one swapping around the front one onto here and hopefully making up some kind of clip so that I can lock the airbox down so it doesn't suck in any unwanted dust particles. So I'm gonna run around the edge of where the airbox elbow is and take it off the Rd28 lid. Bit sad, this airbox cost me $100, but well, so be it. I'm gonna have to be using my carbide burr on this. There's probably a better tool you could use, but the best precision I can get is with this. I might, you could use like a hacksaw blade, but I'm just going to do this because it's going to be easy. Make sure you wear your safety glasses and your earplugs as well. Okay, so I've got my part here. Now I'm going to chop out the top of the RD box and then sit it about here and then glue it in. So I'm going to mark up where I want to chop, making sure I leave extra that I can take away rather than cutting too much in the first pass and making it look like a shit job. So for anyone with eagle eyes, you would have noticed that there's a lot of sand inside the airbox lid. So at one point in this car's life it was sucking in a whole bunch of sand through probably the open part of the airbox, and if you look at the old compressor blade that came off the turbo, yeah, it's pretty obvious that there's been a lot of unwanted stuff going through the engine, which probably explains why there's quite a lot of blow-by coming from the motor, but I guess that's no problem, it still runs. So yeah, I'm going to run it into the ground or until it doesn't want to run anymore, and then at this stage, down the track, I'm going to pull the motor out and build it for 50 psi of boost. So I've cleaned up the top of the airbox. The elbow now sits down like this. So I'll be able to glue this in pretty well with some plastic epoxy. And you can see the airbox comes all the way out to around here, which means all this area I'm going to be able to oval out for better airflow, which is what I'm going to do. Okay, so I've cleaned out the hole now, and its diameter is almost the full 70 millimeters, which is way better than 50, whatever it was before. So I'm going to clean up this with a little bit of thinners or shellite, depending on what I have available, and then glue it with some plastic epoxy. So I won't film it because it's going to depend on the plastic epoxy you buy. It's usually just a 2-part compound. But yeah, I'm going to run a big glob of plastic epoxy, glue this on, and then either run another glob around it or go around it with some silicone just to make sure it's all sealed up nicely. Okay, so I've got the Rd30 elbow grafted onto the Rd28 airbox lid now. So I used some plastic weld epoxy, and then I've gone over all of the holes with JB Weld. I've only used JB Weld Original, and I don't know if that's the smartest idea since it's not technically meant to work very well on polypropylene plastic, but it seems to be pretty tough, so I'm going to leave it overnight to dry, and then I'm going to run around the whole thing with some silicone, some Sikaflex, and what that'll mean is that it will make a perfect proper seal and no water will be able to get in, and then once that's all good I will paint it just to make it look a little bit nicer. But you can see there's a big old hole in there now. I've gone through everything with a file just to round everything off, so hopefully I'll get a good amount better airflow now. Don't actually know how long this stuff takes to cure, but apparently it cures completely translucent, which will be nice. That's starting to look pretty good, so I'm going to leave this to cure now, just making sure that I've got every single little hole done up, And then I'll give it a coat of black paint before I put it back on the car. And then before you put your Sikaflex away, just seal the end of it with some kind of, I like to use a self-tapping screw. And that stops the air getting in and starting the hardening process with the Sikaflex. So I'll leave that here because what I'm also going to do is seal the airbox back into the dam coming from the snorkel. I'm going to seal it with this stuff as well. The only problem is I read on the back it's not meant for polypropylene plastic, which is what this is. But you know, like it's going to be fine. I literally yeah, it's fine. So the airbox has been sealed back in with the same epoxy, and it's sealed on the inside as well. Got to make sure you do that so it doesn't leak water through. But yeah, it's nice and tight in there. It's not moving anywhere. It's sealed into the dam which runs to the snorkel. So I'm going to pop the air filter in now. Ooh, goes that way around. And I'm also going to make up a rubber gasket that sits on this edge here, so that if water does, per the horrible chance, come up to here, it's not going to get sucked in. So I've got the MAF lid here. It's almost fully dry now. In fact, I think it is fully dry. The paint's dry to the touch, and the JB Weld as well as the sealant is, yeah, pretty much fully dry. So I've cleaned up the O-ring that sits in the MAF sensor. I've polished it up with WD-40 and put a bit of grease on it, as well as cleaned up the O-ring mating face on the MAF outlet. Yeah, you got to be sort of take a bit of care wherever you do stuff to do with the intake on a four-wheel drive, just because of the off chance that you go through a river. You want to make sure that it's going to be 100% watertight, because the last thing you want to do is hydrolock your motor. So the airbox lid's all back together now. Looks pretty good. Oh, it looks alright. I mean, it'll take a squint and then you'll realise it's been fiddled with, but yeah, it's definitely a lot more airflow than it had before, so we'll see if the little GT1752 is going to notice anything.